If you've been watching this channel for a few months now, you'll probably be aware of the two videos we made covering the dark web as a subject matter, and to delineate, not the deep web, which is anything under the sun whose web page you can't immediately access by googling it up or using any other rudimentary search engine. These web pages generally include password-protected pages, dynamic pages, and/or encrypted networks. Generally, more recherche pages that usually require some sort of special qualification method to access. For instance, if you're using a YouTube account and you have access to the YouTube Studio page, you're technically on the deep web because you need to fill certain parameters to access such a feature. Not so arcane anymore, is it? The dark web, on the other hand, is the portion of the dark web that exists on darknets, which are overlay networks that necessitate specific software configurations or authorization to access. The most commonly used application for this purpose is the Tor browser, which is a free and open source software for enabling anonymous communication via directing traffic through a free, worldwide, volunteer overlay network consisting of more than 6,000 relays for concealing a user's location and usage from anyone conducting network surveillance or traffic analysis. Translated from ComSci intern trying to sound smart ease to English basically means that they use thousands of computer networks to obfuscate where the user originally came from. Think of it in the same way dirty money travels through tons of offshore bank accounts before it comes back into the hands of criminals as clean money, usually in the form of an expensive asset or an invoice from a shell company. It was originally designed for US governments trying to conduct traffic analysis, which is the euphemistic term for the process of examining people's messages in order to gather information, which can be performed even when the messages are encrypted, with the most nefarious users of this process being the federal government itself excessively curbing out our civil liberties supposedly in the name of counterterrorism, but these feds snooping in on my Brazilian fart fetish videos and acupuncture tutorials need to be indicted, and goddamn you, boss! Sorry for losing my mind for a second there. Anyway, although Fed iniquity is something we could go on and on about, the point is, the reason the browser was made public was because someone who noticed traffic from a Tor exit node would immediately know that someone from that research lab was behind the requests. So by making it public and encouraging a wide variety of people from all walks of life to set up exit nodes and use Tor as a client, it becomes possible to hide in the mass of people who use Tor. If you use Tor, it might be because you want to buy illegal drugs, but it might also be because you're a whistleblower or a human rights activist, or simply worried about your privacy on the internet. They wouldn't know. The stated purpose of Tor was to give citizens in censored nations access to a tool to bypass censorship. They have to access the tool for that to happen, and by far the easiest way to do that is to make it available to the general public. Then totalitarian governments just block access to it and make using it illegal, which nullified that rationale. Now, the only people who use Tor that aren't curious about what dwells on the deep web are criminals, people trying to get high, and people who are paranoid about their privacy on the internet. Don't get us wrong, a lot of people are concerned about their data being mined and backdoored to the government or even shadier organizations, but to use a software that uses thousands of relays to make their original IP address extremely hard to trace, that's another level of vexed. Because of the content we've made in the past, we've probably given off the impression that the dark web is some sort of esoteric and borderline inaccessible dimension of human understanding that demands almost omniscient levels of comprehension and depth analysis that, if grasped in its entirety, will enlighten the feeble human mind and transform it into that of deities in knowing the true depravity and macabre transgression of consideration for human sustenance that will come at a cost of one's frangible soul. Yes, but with an asterisk. Let's explain. What other obscure games could be lurking on the dark web that the gaming community hasn't found yet, or has and just hasn't put at the forefront of the conversation? Has there been anything noteworthy when it comes to games inspired by or directly from the dark web? What could be lurking in the depths deeper than what's beneath the surface that we just haven't found? And just to notify you, none of us actually plan on using the Tor browser to find anything beyond what wikis link us. If we think a .onion link is sketchy or some sort of indexing tool or search engine can be used for purposes that that are too nefarious, we won't even think of going there. Accessing a part of the internet that people think is so secretive actually isn't that hard once you're acquainted with what the dark web actually is. Once you're at the hidden wiki, you're free to click on any of the links to the websites you're led to. You're officially on the dark web, and as long as you're fortunate enough to not get tracked by some sort of government agency or worse, the trench is the limit. That's pretty much it. Everything we just summarized within a couple minutes is the dark web beneath the romanticization, blatantly false stories, and speculation as to what could be on the dark web amidst a lack of knowledge. It's not something that will greatly affect you. To be honest, the deep web isn't that bad in terms of the average user trying to sate their curiosity would think it is. We were hit with the same anticlimactic and somewhat disappointing realization when we found out most of the links were for torrents and free movies. Nobody is legitimately ever convinced by .onion sites claiming to be drug sellers and hitmen for hire, because if you're lucky, most of them are scams, and if you're unlucky, government honeypots designed to catch criminals up to nefarious doings against government interests. We might be describing the deep web a bit reductively here, but it's the safest way we could find to access websites on Tor that won't involve us getting thrown in jail because someone else couldn't keep their crimes off the internet. Dark web pages are extremely intricate in how they evade detection and operate, but it's our task to find what media is legitimately from the dark web originally, and that's legal enough to show on YouTube. So in this particular video, we're going to try to present to you video games that could possibly be from the dark web, but do keep in mind that there's pretty much no way of verifying it came from such a source unless we see a download directly from a website hosted on relayed networks that take an obscure application to access. But being a channel that pretty much exclusively focuses on how video games are creatively designed, what video games besides the one we've previously covered are from the dark web? We've done extensive looking and haven't found any game besides Sad Satan to come out of the deep web, with actual footage of it anywhere besides a Pokemon ROM hack that was supposedly downloaded off the dark web, but just seems to have been made with any other 8-bit oriented game engine, and looks like what you'd expect a horror video game to look like. It was called Pokemon Fire Red version, and simply seems like it was a game made with Game Maker, but claims have been made by Nintendo. It operates like a bird's eye view 8-bit video game that would be made by Nintendo, with the players starting out in their house, then, if they do a bit of exploring, come across a dry cavernous area with holes scattered throughout it. If we grant that the player doesn't quit playing the game out of a sense of boredom and knowledge that there are better games out there, the player will attempt to walk into a cave with signs that have cryptic messages in front of it. After the player walks in, the game will crash supposedly, and the game will produce a file saying this.
5176, what is a crash log? It says, leave me alone equals leave me alone, go away equal go away, please equal please. What? A, I'm not going to leave you alone. B, I'm not going away. And please what, man? It's getting kind of interesting. It's making files now. That's kind of what I like out of any kind of creepypasta game, you know? It's making files and shit. I like it.
After enough persisting, the player will eventually get through to the interior of the cave. The player will enter a lobby of some sort that really doesn't look like what the typical Pokemon cave looks like. There's a row of 6 signs saying, "Do not enter," and all at the front of the room, with what are presumably desks surrounding a staircase that leads underground with an opening in the back. If the player tries to go down the staircase from the left side of it, somehow that's how they'll morph down there. I don't know, it's supposed to be something surreal. Distorted, inharmonious, off-scale music will play, and there's a trail distinguished by fence posts surrounding it, with more cryptic signs spaced out in a row. They could be hashes that translate into something, but what the hell do we know about encryption? Walking to the right and up brings the player in front of 2 cryptic signs, one of which says the word "enter" on it. Walking further upward and then to the left will lead the player to a graveyard. The tombstones have the names and ages of children on them, and are laid out in rows with a wall of flowing blood in the background. Japanese text for the word "victim" is sprawled out in a bold white font. There's not much beyond that besides empty space. You'd probably need Unicode set to Japanese to read the messed up text, which you may then get someone who knows Japanese to translate it back to English for you if you don't know Japanese and only know English. All in all, the game isn't anything noteworthy because there aren't any major scares, screamers, pop-ups, or unnerving in the slightest that comes up in the game, and in our opinions, it's just not that scary. To further cement the idea that this was an attempt at an ARG, there's There's this very candid moment describing how it was an ARG players were supposed to immerse themselves in, and how it was sent to Mutahar in an attempt to muster notoriety. We think it would have received more attention if the game was 1. Much longer, 2. More intricate in terms of its plot and underlying lore, 3. Generally more overt with its scariness and dark web aesthetic. After that, Mutahar tries rearranging files, looking through the text of the .sav file, editing the text, but doesn't find anything significant, or if he did, we guess he didn't find any of it content-worthy. If we take the comment mentioned previously into consideration, there's no way this game was ever downloaded off of the dark web, because it was supposed to be something that captured the authenticity of it. If we're to take both the comment and the readme at the beginning of the game as truth, there's a contradiction, because how could it be downloaded off of the dark web if this person making it and their intentions of why they did it? Beyond the 2 aforementioned games, there's almost nothing else claiming to come off the dark web. We've searched long and wide, nothing but these 2 games come up time and time again. So now that we know there's pretty much nothing we can verifiably prove originated from the dark web, what kind of software accurately simulates the dark web experience? The video game Welcome to the Game is an ARG released on June 15th, 2016, and is supposedly intended to represent the experience of a dark web surfer trying to get to the fabled and mystic Red Rooms, where they'll supposedly see all the torture, gore, murder, and degradation of scruples that they could possibly handle. The game opens up with a definition of the term Red Room, which it says is, quote, a hidden service on the deep web to see and participate in interactive torture and murder, unquote. To start off, the player gets a call from a man named Adam, and Adam appears to be some sort of cybersecurity expert and has the player solve puzzles to block a few different types of hacks to prepare them for what they'll face on the deep web. During the hacks, a skull icon mimicking the Joker laughs in the player's face as they're tasked with the most elementary puzzles and typing challenges possible, like something that would be a lock screen on a Samsung phone. Once that wraps up, the player hits the home icon and they're taken to a web page that has a list of links to certain dark web pages, some of which are functioning web pages with really weird shit, and some are pages the software can't connect to. Although most of the links lead the player to error screens, once the player is actually able to get through to some of the pages, they'll find cryptic sites that are blatantly false and only exist to instill a sense of eeriness, and sites that have really creepy shit on them, like Dollmaker, and by that we just mean an ages-old creepypasta that even someone with one shared brain cell could understand has no basis in reality. Some of the sites are similar to the hack minigames in that they're puzzles, and the player has to figure out how to navigate through them to get one of the 8 codes to the Red Room stream. Some pages are even quizzes that ask the player various questions about their knowledge of the intricacies of the sites on the dark web. Contrary to a multitude of useless features on the anonymous node, the Notes app on the player's computer can assist the player in memorizing the codes they've collected. In addition to the challenge of finding codes that look like website-generated passwords, there are hitman sites, pushers, people that will find out who individuals are if they have a picture of them, hackers for hire, cults, and in general, people up to nefarious doings. The player is also on a time limit to find the codes because the Red Room is only active for a finite amount of time, and on top of that, the player is tracked constantly, and there are kidnappers who are dressed like that one faction from CSGO, constantly out to get them. The most riveting thing in the game, because it's what could be classified as a jump scare. If the player collects the 8 codes within the allotted time limit, they get access to the arcane Red Rooms, where they're able to see the appalling, untenable, and morally reprehensible yada yada yada. Basically what they get to see is what's supposedly torture, but there's a shadow cast over pretty much all of the gory parts, so they can't see anything too explicit. So all in all, is this game an accurate representation of what surfing the dark web is like? No. Not at all, pretty much. To start off with, the main adversity in the game, pigs will fly before you get quote-unquote hacked browsing the dark web. You'll win the jackpot, Congress will stop bloviating, there will be a pill of immortality before you'll be hacked, even when browsing with minimum protections on your browser setup. Your chances of getting some sort of virus, keylogger, ransomware, or various other types of malware we know the names of, etc. if you click on some sort of suspicious link or those sketchy ads that pop up promising the ad 3 inches in length and 2 in girth. Granted that you're not a complete and total dumbass when it comes to the internet, simply browsing on the dark web isn't enough to get you hacked. What's most accurate about the game is that it takes forever to collect links from the page, and if you can connect, there's some sort of page saying it can't go through, although the Tor router will probably just keep on loading perpetually to no avail. You're absolutely not likely to get kidnapped by some guy in a ski mask with nothing better to do at night than kidnap dark web surfers. Due to the unrelenting efforts of the overlay networks to mask the user's true identity, where users are is extremely hard for even the most skilled of professionals to determine, which serves as a double-edged sword for those who work to track down criminals and punish people who are legitimately doing harm. And obviously in our video on the subject, we've emphatically clarified that red rooms do not, cannot, and never have existed in the history of the dark web, mainly due to the fact that one streaming over so many relays would need an unrelenting internet connection and power that isn't available to most any consumer. So encompassing the elements of welcome to the game, it really isn't that accurate of an experience in terms of emulating what the dark web has to offer, because typically one just goes on the Tor browser, clicks the links, and if they're really curious about what's gonna happen, if they buy something, get scammed, because all dark web transactions rely on cryptocurrencies, and markets that legitimately sell goods and services deemed to be illegal get shut down pretty much instantly. But no matter how accurate a depiction of these games are, what browsing the dark web is like, stay away from it and stick to the clear web, because there's more illegal stuff there as there is on the dark web. When we look at the facts of the Tor browser, and nothing but the facts of the Tor browser, we get a much more tranquil idea of an internet browsing method designed to protect user anonymity and deter data harvesting, but serves as a double-edged sword, since people who are legitimately doing immoral things can use the technology to their advantage. But as far as video games from the dark web go, the only game we have substantive evidence for pertaining to the idea that it actually came from the dark web was Sad Satan, but we can't even verify a download source for that, because we have no link to an actual source. Beneath the sensationalism and speculation as to what could be there, coupled with ignorance of what it actually is, makes anybody who's not willing to take real evidence into consideration completely bogus. Yeah, it allows for suspicious levels of anonymity, but only a finite number of people are willing to go that far just to conceal their identity, because even today, Tor is still an obscure method to browse the web, and literally every last thing that everybody has ever suspected is in the deep web is also on the clear web. We've only found one video game that could originate from the dark web, and even then it's opaque. We want to get the message out and say that it's extremely rare for games to verifiably come off the dark web, and that dark web pages aren't as bad as they seem. Thanks for watching.